just coming up to 7 o'clock now, so we'll give it a minute or two before people join in. You know, it's always like, it's weird in a virtual world versus an on-stage real life world, because the curtains are kind of open from when you start broadcasting, as opposed to when you'd officially open the doors for an event. So everyone's very welcome this evening. We've a lot of people registered to join us tonight, so we'll give them a bit of time to come on. And we're all hoping that the restrictions will be lifted somewhat in terms of travel.
It looks positive, doesn't it? I mean, I hope. I think the 5 kilometer thing is just insane at this stage. It's, you know, it's not, we're going to talk a lot about mental health, but it is not good for anyone's mental health.
No.
At all, you know. No. Very unhealthy.
Okay, so I think we will get started. We've lots to get through. So good evening, everybody. We'll get started straight away. Hopefully everybody can hear us that is joining us tonight. So good evening and welcome to the iRevise.com webinar. My name is Joanne Murphy and I'm delighted to host this evening's webinar. This month, the focus is on stress management to support learning and the healthy choices that can positively influence cognitive ability, immunity, and well-being. Good nutrition, exercise, and wellness habits are not just the foundations of a healthy lifestyle, they also support our focus, our ability to process and retain information, resilience, and of course, clear communication. I'm delighted tonight to welcome our guest contributors, Pat Divilly, author, speaker, and resilience coach, and Dr. Laura Lenihan, a GP from Galway, mother of 3, who is also a media contributor on health education. So you're both very, very welcome this evening. Our guests will first introduce themselves briefly and share a little on their understanding on how stress manifests itself and how it is a common and perfectly normal reaction to the challenges we face in life. After that, we will look at some coping strategies, how to make your stress actually work for you, and when to get help if you are not coping. We can also take questions using the Zoom chat box or the Q&A box at the bottom, so you can ask us anything you need to know. The session is also being recorded and will be available on a web link afterwards, so you can check back on any of the details. So just with regards to the Zoom functionality at the bottom, there is a Q&A box down at the bottom that you can use to submit your questions. You can do that anonymously, and you can also submit them into the Q&A box as well. So I'm going to pop over first to Dr. Laura Lenihan. Laura, we're going to start with you. It would be impossible not to be stressed these days, really. When you think about it, everything that's going on in the world, we're talking just before we came officially started tonight about those level 5 restrictions hopefully being lifted. But our students have unique challenges that add to this pressure. What would you say to them in the circumstances we're in today?
Thank you, Joanne. Yeah, I think, look, no one envisaged living through a pandemic, and certainly never mind having to do your leaving cert or higher level exams at this stage. It's just an extra level of pressure. And really interesting, I was doing some research on this. So Irish students in general actually have a much higher level of anxiety in their school and teenage years than they do of their kind of OECD, the European counterparts. Why? They're not really sure, but we see that, and we see that in GP. They tend to present, the good thing is they do present a lot to their GPs, and certainly coming up to exam time last year, we were seeing a lot of it. But, you know, I suppose the exam year in and of itself, if I remember back, I remember thinking this was the most difficult thing I was ever going to have to do. There's so much untold pressure, you know, and you feel pressure from all sides, right? You feel it from in yourself to show that you can do, you know, the best that you can do, and you feel pressure from your parents, even if they don't, if there is no pressure coming, you think there is. You feel pressure from your friends, you know, that you can do as good as them, or you know, you want to do better, and pressure from teachers. And now, just with a global pandemic on top of all that, it becomes kind of insurmountable, I think. And the biggest issue, I suppose, is that in light of all those different pressures, we're actually missing the positive factors that we normally have. So there's all extra pressures like bereavement, worry about COVID, then you're not seeing your friends as much as you normally would. And that's normally a positive thing to help you with your resilience, to help deal with stress and anxiety. You mightn't have support systems. You mightn't be able to do physical activity. And I'm sure Pat is going to talk a lot more about that side of things. But these are things that we use, and not just those, basically everything that we can do to help deal with our anxiety and resilience, and dealing with our mental health. A lot of that is affected now. A lot of it is, I suppose, we're in lockdown. We're not allowed to leave our 5 kilometers. We're not allowed to do our team sports. We're not allowed to meet up with our friends. We're not allowed to go out for a cup of tea, with our friends. There's just all these, you can't do these things. So it's quite difficult for everyone. And then let alone, I suppose, leaving cert students.
Yeah. Before we go into some more questions with you, Laura, I'm going to jump across to Pat to come in there to give him a brief chance to come in to introduce himself. Pat advocates self-care as the most important foundation to achieving anything in our lives. You might share, Pat, some of your experience of how we need to work on physical, mental, and emotional resilience.
Yeah, thank you. This is my biggest passion in life. Emotional and mental wellness, I think, is something that we just have overlooked for too long, and we kind of have to look at it now. So my own experience was, I suppose, struggling with anxiety in school and not really know what was going on. Obviously, anxiety has become much more of a conversation in recent years, but for me, I was just lost and confused as a teenager. And I had a really hard time with processing my emotions and dealing with stress, and I never believed in myself. And so I always looked outside of myself to find self-belief. And the way that manifested as I got older was I set up a business, and I really went out and tried to achieve lots of things, thinking I'll be happy when I achieve my goals. And I achieved all the goals, and I still struggled with my mental health. And then a kind of penny dropped for me that I had always been passionate about physical fitness. And I recognized that you don't just wake up physically fit, you have to do things consistently. And you don't wait until the doctor says you're sick to start going to the gym. You hopefully do it as a precautionary, preventative measure. But my pattern was I'd get overwhelmed. I wouldn't look after myself. I'd start getting into a crisis, and then I'd try to take care of myself. And it kept happening in a loop. I'd get over my anxiety, my panic attack. I'd go back to living the way I was before. And eventually I just had enough of it. And I said, I've got to prioritize my mental and emotional wellness the same way I do my physical health. And that involves doing it daily. There's times in life where everything's going swimmingly and you think you can skip that stuff. But I think the way I see it is it's like a bank balance, and you're putting little deposits in every day so that when the crisis comes, hopefully there's something you can withdraw from. So yeah, that's kind of me. I struggled with my mental health when I failed with things in life. And I also struggled when I achieved the things that I thought would make me happy. And the biggest thing I've learned is it starts with self. So it starts from within you. Nothing outside of yourself will ever make you happy if you've not learned to work on your own stuff. So hopefully I can share some ideas tonight.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned there, Pat, was self-belief and belief in yourself. It's so important that we do actually back ourselves with what we're doing, and the students today need to back themselves that they've done as much as they can for their exams, whether that's leaving cert or younger years coming through, but that we believe in ourselves and we believe that we can do something, because that sometimes is half the battle.
Yeah, it's huge. I always talk about the relationship we have with ourselves, because we're so fixated with other relationships, and we spend so much of the world, or so much of our life spent looking outward, because there's so much distraction, there's noise, there's phones, there's a lot of time from the time we get up in the morning to the time we go to bed at night. I'm looking at what everyone else is doing, and it pulls me away from myself. And so if I always have other people on pedestals and I'm always obsessing over other people's lives, it's no wonder I start to feel like I'm not good enough, and I fail to acknowledge my own progress and my own growth. So that self-belief piece is huge. And it starts with simple things. I think one thing that's really important is to track and acknowledge your progress. So we've got something in our mind called the negativity bias. That's always going to find what you're not doing, what's lacking, what's missing, what's wrong, where your flaws are. It's just a part of our wiring that always looks for threats, always looks for what's going wrong for us. And then, to combat that, I think we've got to press pause, and every evening stop and write down the things you did well in the day. because again, your mind will recognize you didn't get this done or this done, you didn't study this, you're not up to speed with where you should be at this close to the exams. But when you take pen and paper and you say, well, I did this and I did this and I did this, it's like a little kid coming home from school. If the kid comes home and says, I achieved all these things today, and their parents say, well, what are you going to do tomorrow? They're not going to feel very good about themselves. So what the parents do, they say, well done, that's really good. And the kid builds confidence. So our own confidence comes from, I did really well today. What's next?
It's even writing out the list in the morning of the things you need to do as an adult, never mind as a student. We all have to have our little to-do lists and our little goals, because we feel empowered at the end of the day when we can tick off all those little boxes. Laura, we're often the last people, in fact, to recognize our own stress. But what are the warning signs, and what kind of behaviors in another person would suggest that they too have too much stress? Like, how can we recognize stress in our lives?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because stress, I suppose, manifests in so many different ways, and really it can be it can depend from person to person, but there are a couple of different things we can look out for. And we need to realize that stress is basically raised cortisol levels. Okay, so cortisol does what we want it to do in the fight or flight situation. You're being attacked, you get an adrenaline and a cortisol rush, and you get away, you fight or you flight. But those higher adrenaline levels all the time increase your cortisol levels, which lead to physical symptoms of stress. So these are things like, even simple things like irritability, falling asleep, like not being able to concentrate, being really moody, leading then towards anxiety and depression. Maybe friends that don't want to aren't communicating as well, kind of seem withdrawn in themselves. And I think they tend to be the symptoms that we see most as GPs. I suppose kids don't want to go to school as much. They feel pressure from their friends, so they withdraw, or they're even, at the stage where they're suffering from anxiety attacks. And it's important, and Pat mentioned that, it's important to try and notice it early, because actually if we don't, then you can end up kind of burning out. And this is becoming much more common of late. And it's at a stage where you physically and mentally just cannot cope anymore. And so you just crash. And nobody wants to get to that stage. So trying, I suppose, to be aware of the signs and symptoms earlier on is a really important thing to do.
And how would you offset the overwhelm of everything? Because we've students tuning in tonight who are dealing with calculated grades for Leaving Cert, or maybe doing the Leaving Cert. They're dealing with their own teenage issues that they would have as youngsters growing up. They've got COVID outside the door. They can't go outside to play with their friends. There's no team sports. There's no release. So what can we do, or what do you suggest as a medical professional that we can do to help these students to not get too overwhelmed, so that the stress doesn't manifest itself in a physical or mental illness?
Yeah, I think it's really important to find what works for you. Okay. So, and that there isn't a one size fits all. There's no easy answer for any of these things. And I find that, especially as a GP. So the thing I will do is I'll talk to someone. I'll say, what do you like to do? For example, I had someone today, and what she really liked to do to deal with her stress was to watch reality TV. And that's what worked for her. Okay. But the other day, then it was yoga, and then someone else is running. And it's all about taking that time for you so that you don't get overwhelmed. So in life, we all do this, right? We prioritize everything else above ourselves. So whether that's your Leaving Cert, so I need to get, I don't know, the geography of Italy learned tonight, or I need to, finish this assignment, and they go higher up the priority level, and then you and your self-care, they drop down to a stage where they can even just be forgotten about altogether. So the anxiety and the stress becomes so much that that's all you concentrate on. But you need to step back, just as Pat said, and look out for you. And I'm no good at sayings, but the whole "you can't pour from an empty cup" thing is so true. You have to look after you before you can do anything else. So the most simple thing anyone can do is take time for yourself every day. And I think, prioritizing at the beginning of the day the certain things that you want to do is a really good plan for that. Simple things like getting, the right amount of sleep. Like, I think for students as well, the big thing is, they stay up all night and they're like, I need to get this done, and they cram. And actually, that's a vicious cycle. So the less sleep you get, the less rested you are, the less you can concentrate, the less work you will get done the next day. So I love Pat's idea, finish the end of the day at a set time and write down what you've accomplished, and you will be surprised as to how much you have. And then say, okay, and maybe you might even start by doing a list for what you want to accomplish tomorrow, and then go from there. And it's really, I suppose, about taking little steps. And then if it is at a stage where you think, you know what, I can't handle this anymore, I can't take time for myself, who am I? Like, what is time for myself? All I can think about is the exams. Then you need to speak to someone. And whether that's your mom or your dad or a friend or your GP, we're all there to help you. And there are lots of different options available, from counseling to medications if you're particularly bad. And if one good thing, there are lots of good things about the pandemic, lots of terrible things, but one good thing is counseling services are actually a lot more available now, and there's more and more counselors available online. There's Let's Get Talking in Galway. There's lots of different options to help you talk through. And also, everything is online now. So you can do mindfulness online, you can do your yoga online, you can do a 20-minute HIIT class if that's what you like, or you can watch the Desperate Housewives, or whatever those people are. Whatever it is for you that works. So you have to find what works for you and do it, and make a point to look out for you every day, I think.
I think that's some very valid points in that, Laura. Pat, you were nodding your head there. Do you want to jump in and add to anything Laura has said there before I come to a question that's forming in my head for you?
Yeah. Maybe just an analogy that I can share that a psychologist shared with me a couple of years ago that really struck a chord. The fight or flight response that Laura mentioned is this natural response that we all have, and it's there to keep us safe. So if I leave my house and a car pulls out in front of me, the fight or flight response is what gives me a surge of energy to jump out of the way. So it's a protective mechanism. But in the modern world, our thoughts cause us that very same response. So if I whisper in your ear that someone in school said they don't like you, you get that feeling in your body. So it's a sensation of the adrenaline being released. And then I'm stressing about exams, and that's more adrenaline, and it's constantly on the go. And what this does is it leaves us tired in the evening, but wired, meaning it's hard to switch off because as far as our old brain is concerned, we're under threat. And so we can't go and relax. There's two states we can be in: fight or flight, which is protect myself at all costs. And then the other state we can be is rest and digest. And that's where my body and my mind knows I'm safe, I'm okay, I can relax, I can recover. And so what we need to be doing is allowing ourselves to go from one state into the other. And again, we need tools for that. It's not just going to happen by itself. But the psychiatrist a couple of years ago, or psychologist, one of the ists that I went to, shared this analogy with me. And she said, it's a little bit like a fire alarm in your house. She said, if you've got a fire in your house and the fire alarm goes off, it's great because it keeps you safe. But she said, if you have a fire alarm in the house and it goes every time you use the toaster, then it's an issue. And so in the same way, my stress response is really useful when I need it. But if it's going every time I have a thought, then I've got to think about how do I maintain my fire alarm. And one other quick analogy, I like my analogies. Fight or flight is like having your foot on the accelerator of a car. And so the car gets faster and faster. And the faster the car gets, if the foot's always on the accelerator, I start to feel out of control, and eventually I crash. And so the encouragement is, how can I put my foot on the brake? In other words, how do I slow down my mind a little bit every day? And as Laura said, it's different things for different people. It's finding that and just having that in your head. Did I slow down the car today? And I would say time in nature is a great option. Some form of exercise is a great option. Some form of meditation is a great option. Chatting with friends. But we all know the things that make us feel better and the things that make us feel. And one of our issues is the stress response is addictive. That's why people are addicted to the news, because we're experiencing so much stress. Our body just recognizes it and it wants more of it, even though it's counterintuitive. So again, it's catching ourselves, saying the car's getting a little bit too fast here. I'm starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed and out of control. How do I slow it down?
But how do you slow it down?
Well, there's lots of options. I mean, as Laura mentioned, the sleep is huge. I think meditation for me is one of the biggest things. And I know when I was younger, I wouldn't look at meditation. I thought it was for hippies, and I thought you had to sit cross-legged under a tree. But your breath will change your physiology. It'll change the way your body feels, the way your mind reacts. And it literally, you can think about it like this. When you feel under threat, you're in a part of your brain called the reptilian brain, and all that cares about is survival. Reptilian brain just wants to keep you alive another day. And so it's always looking for threats. It's always looking for danger. It's always looking for problems. For us to feel good, and the way I would put this is, if we think about when do we have our best ideas, the responses are usually when I'm in the shower, when I'm out for a walk, just before I go to bed. It's times when you're relaxed. So you don't perform well cognitively when you're stressed. And so the fastest way to go from stress to relaxed is the breath. We're typically told, take a deep breath, and we tend to go like this, and it barely gets in. And so a deep breath really is breathe through your nose, breathe deep into your belly, and breathe slow. If you look at a baby, babies before they need therapists, they breathe naturally and they breathe right. So they breathe in through the nose, deep, slow, consistent breaths. And so I share an exercise called the box breath, which is very simple. You draw a box with your breath. So what that means is you place your hands on your belly, you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. You just take a big inhale. So it's, and then you hold the breath for 4. So you're starting to draw a box in for 4, hold for 4, then you exhale for 4, and then you hold for 4. That's 16 seconds. Do 4 of them, and I promise you that you slow down the car. Everything's easier. You go from thinking there's only problems in my life to there's some solutions here too. So it's just about going from the problem to perspective. And again, the breath is probably the easiest way.
And is that something, Pat, that you would recommend you would do in a daily situation? I'm going to talk to Laura about sleep in a minute, but you're thinking, you know, I've got an oral exam, because the oral exams are on at the moment for the Leaving Cert. So, you know, a couple of minutes before the oral exam, or maybe when you're in the midst of worrying about your French, your German, your Irish, your Spanish, whatever it is, that you would take those breaths even while you're sitting waiting to go in to the oral exam, to try and calm down the nerves a little bit.
100%. And when I'm experiencing stress, because I still experience stress, I'm sure we all do, and overwhelm, and I'm not good enough, and I'm not prepared enough, and all of these stories. The trick is, can I notice, number one, we're always telling ourselves stories. This is where a lot of stress comes from. So if I've got an exam coming up, that's not stressful. The story about me not being prepared is what's stressful. So it's the story. So I need to catch myself. What's the story I'm telling myself about my situation? It's like it rains every day here in Galway. That stresses some people because they think it shouldn't rain, but you got to accept the way things are. So you accept how things are, and then you ask, what can I do with this? There's a good example of if there's 2 people crossing the road and one person's worried and the other person's concerned, you're going to want to cross with the person who's concerned, because the person that's worried is not going to move an inch. The person who's concerned is going to assess the problems, and then they're going to move. So in the same way, I'm not going to live in cuckoo land and pretend that, you know, I'm not going to study anything, I'll be fine because I'm relaxed and I'm going to do my box breath. But it is, I am where I am. I can only go from where I am. I can only control what's in my control. But this practice is self-care. So yeah, before oral, you know, before any of these exams coming up, and when I'm experiencing stress, I would do 2 to 3 minutes of the box breath, and I promise you, without fail, it'll help you feel better. Same thing for going to bed. I know Laura's going to talk about sleep, but the way I put it to people is, if a child was jumping up and down on a trampoline and then trying to go to bed, they wouldn't have a chance of falling asleep. But we are looking at our phones.
Tonight.
I was going to say, you're the one to talk about stress when you got a couple of kids. I've an easy life compared to but
Pat, you did mention sleep, but I want to jump across to Laura, because sleep hygiene, I don't think I've ever heard of sleep hygiene before, you know, the early 2010s maybe, or the early 2020s, but sleep hygiene is a massive part of reducing stress. We're constantly stressed with our phones in our hands and our blue lights. Talk to me a little bit about sleep hygiene, and what our students can do to kind of get relaxed, aside from the breath piece, but maybe set themselves up to be able to get the best night's sleep possible.
Well, it's all like, as Pat said, I have 3 small kids, and it's all about having a routine, I suppose, at nighttime. And I think, you know, we're stuck to our phone, to our computer, to screens all the time now. It's not good for us. It's not good for our mental health. It's not good for our eyes. It's not good for our brain. And we need to come away from that, especially at nighttime. So setting up sleep hygiene is all about setting yourself up to go to bed right, and to calm your brain before you go to sleep. So things like no phones in the bedroom, okay, leave them outside. Get an old-fashioned alarm clock. Some people like those, never remember the name of the ones, but the ones that like mimic the light, the Philips, you know, that wake you up naturally if you don't want an alarm clock. So phones out of the bedroom. Have a routine. whether it's that you read a book, and a paper book, not a leaving cert revision book, simple kind of routines. Maybe you light a candle, maybe you decide I'm going to take 10 minutes every night to do my face, my skin care, whatever it is, just have a little kind of, I suppose, bedtime routine for you, because that helps calm you. And I love Pat's idea of doing the deep breathing. Sleep is so important. So important. And it's so important when you're trying to study, when your brain is on over all the time. You need to allow your brain to relax. The neurons need to stop firing all the time. They need to repair if there's any issues, and so we need that time. We need that time to sleep, to regenerate, and allow the brain to get back to where it needs to be in the morning to have another productive day. I think phones are the biggest culprit, and even sleeping with them beside you on the bed, or the fact that there's so much strain from blue light now, or causing vision issues, short-sightedness. Those kind of simple things will all make a big difference to your sleep.
And one tip that I was given a while back was, if you're working from your bedroom, so this goes to people who are working or who are studying in their bedroom, is to make sure that you cover your desk at night. When you're finished your study, decide that at 7 o'clock at night, I'm putting down my pen, I'm closing my laptop, I'm closing my books. Actually cover it. Because if we walk back into our bedrooms to go to bed, the first thing we'll see is the stressor. So at least if we throw like a sheet over it or something, it will help to kind of use the bedroom as a bedroom, a place to sleep and for rest, and not for stress. Pat, positivity sometimes is very cliched, and it's a lot easier said than done, especially these days. But we can work on our mindset to stop all this back chatter, this negativity that's in the back of our heads, that's kind of limiting our self-belief. What can we do to try and stop some of that back chatter that we get, that tells us we're not good enough, we're not strong enough, we're not fast enough, we're not brainy enough?
Can I share my screen?
You can, absolutely. I was waiting for it to happen. I wasn't sure when it happened.
Okay, I'll keep this brief, but we'll go back to school here. I never thought it was academic, so now's my chance to be a teacher. Sorry, 1 second now. I'm heavily influenced by cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a way of kind of understanding the voices in our head. And so in terms of how do we deal with the voices in our head, hopefully I'm not the only one with voices in my head. Someone showed me this years ago, and it really changed how I see the world. We're experiencing, or we have thoughts all the time. So there's thoughts happening all the time. I have thoughts about whether I'm good enough. I've thoughts about whether I have enough done. I've thoughts about how prepared I am. I've thoughts about how much sleep I got. I've 60 to 90,000 thoughts a day on average, they say, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But our thoughts impact how we feel. So my thoughts have an impact on my feelings. So when my thought is I haven't done enough, I'm going to feel overwhelmed. When my thought is I'm making progress, I'm going to feel a little bit more, in control. How I feel has an impact on the actions I take. So when I was in school, my story was I'm not academic, I'm not clever, I'm not smart. So I told myself that. We talk to ourselves all the time. So I told myself 100 times a day, I'm not academic, I'm not clever, I'm not smart. And so the feeling that thought gave me was I felt hopeless when I came to school. And so the action I took, because I felt hopeless, was I'd skip school, or I'd put more effort into sport. And your actions give you results. So because I wasn't studying enough, I wouldn't get good results. And this becomes a vicious circle, because then you can point back and you can say, oh, I didn't get good results. See, I'm not academic. So I got caught in this cycle. And what happens is we try to change our goals, which are our results, or we try to change our actions, which are our habits. But really the driving force is the way we're talking to ourselves, as you mentioned. So we need to change the thoughts. When we change the thoughts, we change the feelings. And this is what, a great parent would do when you're a kid. You come home, you're sad, you say, Sarah called me stupid. And your parents go, you're not stupid, you're really clever. Look at all they're changing how you see things. They're changing your perspective. So back to your question, the way I think we change our perspective is we ask ourselves better questions. So again, we've already touched on one of them was, what have I achieved today? That gives me, whatever I ask myself, I'll come up with answers. So if I ask myself, why do I never get much done? I'll come up with answers. If I ask myself, why am I not academic? I'll come up with answers. So if we ask better questions, we get better answers. So again, questions could be, what did I learn today? How did I get better today? What did I achieve today? What did I accomplish today? Who did I help today? What did I enjoy today? So I would physically have pen and paper, And I would round out the day. I've got a workbook I'd like to share at the end, but it's got some suggestions in there. It's really simple stuff, but just a couple of things you can write down, and this starts to put your mind in a different place. I think if I wake up in the morning and I pick up my phone and I start looking at everybody else's life, it's really rolling the dice with how I'm going to feel mentally, because I might see something on social media that throws me completely off course, and then the whole day gets away from me. Whereas if I can start my day with a couple of minutes of asking great questions, what am I excited for today? What am I grateful for today? What are my priorities today? And then I can round out my day at the end with some questions again to think about what's working. And this is how we start to navigate the voices, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you're talking about there, Pat, as well, is perspective. And it's about changing our perspective. And Laura, it's sometimes very hard to keep things in perspective when you're under severe pressure. You know, what, as a medical professional, what would you say to us to try and keep things in perspective when we're falling over with the pressure?
Yeah, it is. And it's difficult at the minute, isn't it? When you're in those stressful situations, again, it's like Pat said, you're in this vicious circle. And so you feel like the sky is falling in, like you're chicken little, you know. And so it's difficult. It's difficult to retain perspective, especially when you are. I suppose the issue then with stress and anxiety and depression is there's changes in the hormones, right? So your serotonin levels start to decrease in the brain, and so that it becomes then more difficult for you to get perspective. So it comes down to the simple things again, I think, and that's why I think what Pat just showed there is really good. You know, looking at, you know, I suppose being aware, you know, being self-aware. And I think that's a really difficult place to get to. It took me a long time. I'm actually probably not still there at 39 years of age, you know. That's a really hard place to get to. So it's about, you know, being self-aware, trying to just take, I suppose, little steps every day. And so practicing gratitude or writing down, you know, what you've accomplished. Like, think about things in perspective. Yes, you know, the leaving cert is really important, but if you don't get, you know, the points that you really want, there are loads of other options. And actually, when you get past the leaving cert, you'll realize it's not the most important thing you'll ever do in your life. There are loads of other things coming up, you know, and that's not to downplay it. It's just that your perspective will change as your life progresses. So yeah, you know, you sent me this question in advance and I didn't really come up with a great answer because I think it is particularly difficult. And so it is just about trying to take the small wins, you know, take every day, you know, one day at a time, one win at a time, one challenge at a time, and know that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Laura mentions there, Pat, about being self-aware, that it's not just about self-care, it's about self-awareness as well, and being able to recognize when things are starting to go a bit pear-shaped. But being self-aware is also about being aware of the situation around you and not feeding off the negativity that other people are having as well. And how important is that in terms of keeping a positive mindset?
It's huge. And but I mean, the self-awareness, again, it does start with the self, you know, and I think the emotions piece, when we talk about positivity, it's worth mentioning, at least my perspective is, I look at my own past, and there was times where if I was sad, I thought there was something wrong with me. If I was lonely, I thought there was something wrong with me. And so I was almost in a toxic positive place, like of trying to be happy all the time, of trying to be motivational all the time. And the problem with trying to be happy all the time is anytime you're not, you think you're doing something wrong. And again, that becomes a vicious cycle. So self-awareness is about, how do I feel? And you don't make your feelings wrong. You just feel what you feel. And the follow-up question to that is, what do I need? So as an example, how do I feel? I feel lonely. I live alone for a year in lockdown, so I feel lonely. I'm not going to make that wrong because it's a feeling and it is what it is. What do I need? I need a bit of connection. How do I meet connection? And then I allow myself feel the feeling. So someone might say, what am I feeling? I'm feeling overwhelmed with the exams. Rather than make that wrong or berate myself or judge myself for that and get caught in this vicious cycle, how do I feel overwhelmed? What do I need? I need to feel a sense of certainty. Okay, how can I meet that sense of certainty? Maybe it's I'm going to sit down and study for a few minutes. Maybe it's I'm going to take the evening off. Maybe it's I'm going to have a conversation with someone and tell them about the struggles I'm having. That's a big thing. If you can verbalize this stuff to someone, a lot of these difficult emotions we experience live in the dark and they grow in the dark. But when you bring them out into the light, it's a lot lighter, you know, lightens the load. So yeah, self-awareness, I think it starts with self. And then the other piece, as you mentioned, is that we can take on other people's stuff. it's important to note that other people's stuff is their stuff and our stuff is our stuff. So everyone around me could be sad. It doesn't mean I have to be sad. Equally, everyone could be around me could be happy. It doesn't mean I have to be happy. I'm me, you're you. And I need to respect other people's feelings and needs, but I also need to respect my own feelings and needs. A lot of us become people pleasers in life, which is I want to keep everyone else happy, but at the detriment of myself. So key aspect of self-awareness is what story am I telling myself and how am I reacting to my feelings? Resilience, when I was growing up, was the idea of being tough and being nitty gritty and just getting through things. Resilience to me now is about how many of my emotions can I be with? Because if you consider, if you've got a friend and your friend is sad and you're like, I'm not going to hang out with them, they're sad today. You're an awful friend. You're not a good friend. But then with ourselves, you're like, oh, I'm sad. I don't like myself today. It's like, no, like yourself, even if you're sad, like yourself, even if you're overwhelmed. Because again, it's this vicious circle thing that we talk about. I don't know if I answered your question, Joanne.
I think you did. I think there's plenty of messages in what you're saying. Now, we have had some questions come in directly this evening, so I'm going to jump across to those before we go back to the questions that came in advance. So the first of those, and again, to our audience tonight, do feel free to pop your questions into the Q&A section. We'll do our best to answer them for you. So this first question is, any advice for motivation for studying for the Leaving Cert? I'm really struggling with motivation and the exams are now so close and I feel so far behind and feel I don't even know how to study.
I'll go, if that's okay, Pat. I actually felt like that when I did my Leaving Cert. The thought of like, you know, where to even begin. And again, overwhelm gets you then, because the closer you get to the exams, the more difficult it is. And that pretty much followed me throughout my college career. And I've done like 11 years in college now, between undergrads, postgrads, and then medicine. And what I find works best for that is planning. Okay, so you need a plan and you need to sit down and plan your day from here until the exam, really know what you want to cover. So prioritize and then plan it out. So you need to spend a couple of days doing that, and even maybe a week doing that, to go through, you know, okay, well, I'm doing geography, what do I need to study for that? I'm doing, you know, English, what do I need? And then you have a list and you plan it out, and plan in chunks, and make sure you take breaks. So you have to allow for all of that. And I think, you know, it's also really difficult to find how to study. That's a really difficult thing. And again, I keep on saying the same thing over and over, I feel like, but everyone does everything differently. So some people need to write everything down, right? I'm a person that needs to write down. I like to write it down and I like to highlight it and maybe squish the pen around it a few times. So you got to find what works for you. Other people just need to read it. Other people need to talk it out loud. And other people like to study in groups, you know. So I think if that was me in that situation, I would sit down, I would spend a few days planning, and then I would plan out my time between now and the exams, and I would just get started, because the overwhelm, the lack of perspective probably that you're in now is what's getting to you. And actually just going and starting it will make it all seem so much easier.
It's a bit like having a picture of an elephant and trying to take small chunks out of the elephant every day. You can't eat the elephant whole, but you just need to start somewhere, whether that's 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it is, to try and get you started. Pat, do you want to come in on that as well? Or will I jump to the next question, because I think this one is for you?
Let me just quickly, just on the planning thing, I think the plan is everything. And as Laura mentioned, plan your breaks. I think a huge, again, all this stuff that I talk about, I'm trying to work on myself, so definitely don't have it sorted. But there's the idea of being fully engaged. And the example I give is, let's say the Irish rugby team play a game on a Sunday, they're fully playing, they're not thinking about anything else, they're playing for those 90 minutes. But when they come, or I don't know how long a rugby game is, 80 minutes, whatever it is, but when they come off and they're done, they're completely switching off then. And so most of their week then is about recovery. They wouldn't go back to the gym the next day and try to set personal records, because they recognize they would get burnt out and injured. And so in the same way, if we take our breaks and you put in proper breaks, you need to be fully off when you're on the break and then fully on when you're working. That's the key, because I could spend 10 hours here working at the desk, pretending I'm working and getting little bits done. Or I can write down. The Pomodoro technique's really useful. It's a simple technique that people use where for 25 minutes, you work intensely and then you take a 5-minute break. So set a timer for 25 minutes, turn off your phone, get something done in those 25, then get up and move for 5 minutes, do a couple of breaths, get back down, do a few burpees, a few push-ups, a few squats. No, I'm joking. Do 25 on, 5 off. 25 on, 5 off.
Year of fitness. Every leader, a student will be fit as a fiddle.
but prioritize those breaks. And again, when you're on, be on, because you'll have to do half the amount. You don't have to be sat there for the whole night, half studying. You're better off do a couple hours, an hour, even full.
That's
I'm just going to. Sorry, Laura.
I was just going to say, actually, a friend of mine sent me an app on the phone. So, because I'm terrible, because I do a lot of my work on Instagram these days. So my phone is like always on. I have no notifications, but I got some app with a bear that you turn it on. It's a 25-minute timer. You turn it upside down. It'll play white noise if you want, or music if you want, but it won't let you open the phone then until the 25 minutes are up. And I think for, teenagers and people who are studying and the phone is a big distraction, that's probably a really good way to do it and give yourself the 25 minutes.
And can I just tell the students as well that it happens all of us. Like,
Yeah.
even at our age, we all get distracted. We're all on our social media, and we do have to set those small chunks of the elephant and those timers. And because we do, even as adults, we have to I suppose be mindful. Pat, really is the word you're looking for when you're talking about staying in the moment and concentrating fully on it's maths I'm doing now, or it's Irish, or it's German, or whatever the topic is. And then I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to go back and maybe do something else. It's a bit like with physical fitness, you have to make the time as well for your daily walks or your running or whatever it is that you do to just chill out.
Just something quick. Just something quick on the motivation piece. When we're lacking motivation, our mind has gone to a story about how painful the thing is. So if I'm not motivated to study, my mind has come up with a story that it's painful to study and it's more relaxing to sit on the couch. So I need to change the story. And the way I do that is I ask myself, what's the payoff for doing this? So what's the long-term payoff is number one. Maybe I get to do the college course I wanted, and maybe a year from now I'm traveling for a year, who knows? But you need to think about, why am I doing what I'm doing? What's the payoff? Because again, your mind has gone to why not. It's like exercise. I don't want to work out, but what's the payoff? I feel better in my mind. I feel better in my body. I feel more confident. And then on a micro level, you could think about, what's the payoff if I sit for an hour and I get this next thing done? I'm going to allow myself to fully switch off. So again, when you're struggling with motivation, you're associating pain to the task. If you associate some form of pleasure to getting it done, it helps.
Somebody asks as a follow-up question, I would imagine, from that first one I asked, was, why am I so bad at following my plans? But I think we've kind of maybe provided the tools to help you follow those plans. So I hope we've answered that question for you. Pat, I'm going to ask you this question. I had a really bad day once where I was hyperventilating and sobbing, and it was really suffocating. I was in school. How do you calm down quickly and without it coming back every 3 minutes?
Yeah, so I was going to recommend a book, but I think people have enough to be doing for now, so I won't recommend the book. But this might sound strange, but on some level, if I try to fight what's coming up and I try to fight a feeling, it makes it worse. So if you imagine a beach ball, if you've got a beach ball and you try to push it underwater and hide it, the more you push it down, the further down it tends to go. So my experience is when anxiety comes up or overwhelm comes up and I start to, I'm not supposed to feel this. There's a lot of energy required to push that down. Now, granted, you're not going to want to hyperventilate and you're not going to want to, become overwhelmed. Again, it comes back to the breath and it comes back to just slowing things down. Can you repeat the question, just the start of the question, John? I heard something in the start of the question that...
So this particular individual said they had a really bad day where they were hyperventilating and sobbing and it was very suffocating. They were in school. So the question was, how do you calm down quickly and without that hyperventilation feeling coming back every 3 minutes?
Yeah, again, I think it's trying to just slow the breath. I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but really what happens is it's almost like a feedback loop. When I'm stressed, my breathing tends to become quite shallow. And when my breathing's shallow, there's a signal being sent to my mind that I'm stressed. And this becomes a cycle. So you almost have to fool your mind. My mind thinks I'm under threat and I'm in danger here. I just got to breathe. It might not feel natural for the first few breaths to breathe deep, but as I start to breathe, I will find myself settle. The other thing that might be useful for this person is on some level, maybe he or she has a bit of a fear that it's going to happen again, which it sounds like it might be. So it could be worth asking yourself, how am I going to approach it if it does happen again? And also asking, can I recognize something that triggered it the last time? So again, this is self-awareness, coming to understand our patterns. Okay, because I could fear it happening again and just worry about it happening again, or I can be concerned that it could happen again. And again, the difference is concern is asking, when it does happen, how will I? So hopefully that's one thing this person can do, is slow the breath. And again, recognize that it might take a few breaths, but trust me, when you keep breathing, eventually your mind says, okay, I trust you now, we're safe.
Yeah, I really like that analogy of the concern and the worried person. It's actually very smart. I really think we can take that forward a bit. Laura, somebody is asking, what's the name of the app again that you mentioned? I think it was that 25-minute app. So I'll give you a minute to try and find it for us, and then I'll come back to Pat. What's the best way to deal with beating yourself up for not being productive at work?
Is it me, is it?
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, John.
Laura's
I found it.
Okay, so Pat, the question for you to answer is, what's the best way to deal with beating yourself up for not being productive at work? And while you're thinking about the answer, I'm going to come to Laura for the name of the app.
It's Bear Focus Timer, BFT. So it looks like.
Can you type it into the chat for us, Laura?
Yeah, I'll type it in.
Perfect.
Can I say something there, if you don't mind, about the girl or the boy with the anxiety? And what I would consider an anxiety attack or a panic attack, if that's occurring regularly, you need like all the mechanisms that Pat spoke about, or how you deal with it in the there and the here and now when it occurs. And you spoke about CBT, Pat. So CBT is really important because it teaches you, if you feel that feeling coming on, how you deal with it and whatnot. But if that's occurring a lot, and it's you might want to consider speaking to your GP as well, because anti-anxiety, so using something like a low dose antidepressant. So we use SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, at low doses to just help normalize your serotonin levels, and they can really be really beneficial in these situations. Now, not everyone wants drugs. I'm not advocating that everyone needs drugs. But if it is occurring all the time, it's worth considering that. And I'm going to type the name of the thing.
Can I ask you just to explain to people what CBT is? I know it's cognitive behavioral therapy, but just to stop people going to Dr. Google to find out what it is, maybe from yourself, just an explanation of it.
Yeah, so mine is pretty basic, but the way I look at CBT is, if you have an issue, so say, you have OCD and, you're afraid that every time you open the door, you're going to pick up germs off the door. What CBT does is kind of try to get to the bottom of that, and then try to help you deal with what you're going to do when you feel like that. So the same way, if you're having a panic attack, and that, say, I get a panic attack every time I walk into a crowded room. When you have to go into a crowded room, your CBT is going to help you develop behaviors that are going to help with those situations. That's kind of my basic understanding, and it works really well. And that would probably be my first port of call. I mean, we refer to therapists in general, and often kind of someone will go and chat to a therapist, and then they will say, well, actually, I think CBT will work for you, or more, a didactic therapy, or they've lots of different kind of therapies available. So, but it is a really good one.
Perfect. Pat, I'm going to come back to you with the question. I'll ask it again. It's like, who wants to be a millionaire? What's the best way to deal with beating yourself up for not being productive at work?
I was going to say go from worried to concerned, but I won't say that. I think, one thing you can do is, again, I keep coming back to self-awareness, but John Kavanagh, who was a mixed martial arts coach, has a phrase of you win or you learn. You win or you learn. So it's trying to get away from this idea of failure, because there's no such thing as failure. Failure implies that things are finite and that it's over, and it's never over. I mean, in theory, if you failed your leaving cert, you could go back and go again, in theory. So with that in mind, you win or you learn is the idea that even when we lose a match, even when we lose at life, at something, there's a lesson in it. So on a micro level, I think about a study session that didn't go to plan, and I didn't get as much study done as I wanted to. The question can be, what did I learn? And maybe I learned that when the phone is next to me, it just doesn't happen. Maybe I learned certain timing doesn't happen. Maybe I learned I drank too much caffeine. Maybe I learned there's a lesson there. So that person could consider that. That could be useful. And again, the CBT style stuff, we could look at what potential problems do I face in the future and how do I deal with them with study sessions. So again, it's a lot of your confidence comes from not just relying on motivation, because some days we're motivated, other days we're not. A lot of your confidence comes from having strategies for the days when you're not. So you could kind of consider that. How am I going to approach this when I don't feel like doing it? What's my commitment to myself? And what's my reward to myself? All these kind of things I think can be useful.
And everything you've just said in the last 30 seconds jumps into my next section that I want to talk about. And we don't have an awful lot of time left, but food and exercise. So important for making sure that we are fueling ourselves properly, mind and body, nourishing ourselves, but then also exercise to make sure that we are getting rid of the daily stresses, getting fresh air. Laura, food is always a topic that we want to talk about. It's like when you put bad food or junk food in, it's like putting petrol into a diesel engine in a car. It won't go very far. Do bad choices around food make it harder to come out of a stressful situation in your mind and to deal with pressure?
I'm going to give you an answer that you're probably not going to like, but realistically, no. You know, if you think, right, you have someone and they're stressed, and now I'm not saying eat badly, okay, but you know, obviously we all want to eat a healthy, varied diet. It's 50 million times better for our brain. You know, if we eat a whole load of sugar, we will inevitably get a sugar crash, you know, and which will lead to irritability and tiredness and everything else. But some people, and this comes back to how different people cope, like some people cope by just wanting to have a crappy meal. And if, you know, at the end of the day, you know, if you reward yourself from a really good day of studying by having like Supermax pizza, and you feel okay with it, that's not going to do you any harm in the long term. Okay, I know I shouldn't be advocating for that as a GP, but like, let's be a little bit realistic. Yes, you should eat healthily. You should eat all the foods you like. You should snack appropriately. We know that. We all know that that's right for us. But actually, I think there's a lot of stigma isn't the right word, like, but I don't think people should punish themselves for wanting to eat something that they like. You know, if you want it as a treat, have it as a treat. If you feel like crap after it and maybe you can't study after it, then you won't do it the next time if it affects you like that. But I think there has to be, I try to be really honest and real in everything that I share online. And I think there has to be a certain amount of leeway for people, especially leaving cert students. You know, if you want to go and get your curd cheese chips after a hard night of study or whatever, or an exam, that's okay. You know, it's not going to affect the next exam. You mightn't study great after it. You might get a few cramps, you know, but
does it come back to just getting the balance right though?
Yes, yeah, and that's it. Like, so we should, as a whole, eat healthily. You know, obviously, the healthier food we eat, the better our brain is, the better our cognitive function is, the better everything works. We need, you know, vitamins and minerals to keep our body sustaining appropriately. We need, you know, omega oils for our neurons to function better. And if you're pregnant, you know, you want to take high levels or higher levels of omega oils to help with baby's brain development. So yeah, it does. But, you know, it's okay to dip into the bad stuff every now and then, would be my realistic, honest take on it. I know Pat is definitely going to disagree, and Joanne, you're like very fit and healthy as well, but you know, just a little bit realistic as well, I think is okay.
Pat, do you want to jump in there as well?
I completely disagree. No, no. I would agree. I think 80-20 is always a good gauge of like,
absolutely,
let's do the right things 80% of the time. My understanding is like a huge amount of serotonin and the, you know, the happy hormones are coming from the gut. So it's the brain gut connection. So we do need a healthy gut. So as Laura had mentioned, if I eat a meal and I never liked to label foods good or bad foods. I always just asked, how did it make me feel? And so if I eat a certain food and I don't feel good after, I say, oh, I didn't feel good after that, so maybe I won't do that again. So again, it's just learning about myself. But again, 80-20, I think is a kind of good gauge on that side of things with the food. And also thinking about instead of restricting foods or cutting stuff out, there is the trail of thought or the school of thought that if I get the good stuff in, there's less cravings for the bad stuff. And so then I allow myself the bad stuff. So let's get fruits, let's get nuts, let's get, you know, a couple of proper meals in the day, and then do what you want after that. Generally, if you get 3 good meals in the day, and again, I eat plenty of pizza and everything else, but it's again, self-awareness, learning that I know certain foods that I eat, I struggle to sleep, and I know it's just, I don't feel good the next day. So I just learn as I go.
Yeah, I definitely think that whole thing around seeing food as fuel. So as an athlete, if we eat rubbish food, we can't go for long, or we can't go very far on our bikes, or when we're swimming or running. So when we put good food into our bodies, we think better, we train better, we work better, we make better choices generally around everything. So speaking of exercise, obviously exercise has lots of feel-good endorphins as well, but with the added stress of exams coming up to exams, whether you're in first year of secondary school or leaving cert, there's always pressure. And it's almost like we ditch exercise because we need to keep our heads in the books. But that's not a good thing, Laura.
No, absolutely. You have to take time for you. And it comes back to kind of everything that we've said throughout this evening. You know, you have to prioritize yourself above anything else, because if you're not complete, if you're not taking time for yourself, then you can't study properly, you can't concentrate. You know, you have to look after you have to look after your mental health, and you have to look after your physical health in order to be the best you can be, the best student you can be, the best studier you can be, I suppose.
Now, Pat, if you are not somebody who has ever been picked to play on the local hurling team or the football team, and you haven't found your sport in secondary school and you hate running, what sort of exercise could somebody do who really just has their head stuck in the books and they don't see the outside light of day from one end of the week to the other until they get to the weekend where they can go and breathe some fresh air in down at Salt Hill or down, you know, Dangan or whatever it is that they go to for their fresh air? You know, how do we encourage students to find a sport that they can enjoy, that they don't see it as a burden to go and do?
Yeah, I was 15 before I found any sport that I actually liked, so I can resonate with those students. I think it's just recognizing that it's playing a role in the bigger picture. So again, the bigger picture, if it were me in the shoes of having my exams coming up and be dealing with the massive amount of change that has been and the challenge there's been the last year, one of the biggest challenges for everybody has been, as human beings, we all have coping strategies. So I talked earlier about when we have difficult feelings, we've got needs, and our needs are not being met. And generally we have coping strategies. So I might go to the gym or whatever it might be. A lot of those coping strategies are taken away in the last year, and that's what's proved difficult. The socialization is gone. There's so many things gone. But I'd be thinking in the bigger picture. I'd be saying, right, a year from now, hopefully we're going to be in a very different position individually and collectively. We're all going to be, you know, in a much better place. And so we just need to look after ourselves for the next couple of months. So the exercise is not really about the exercise. The exercise is more about the head. And that's coming from a guy that ran a gym for a couple of years. It's more about your mind. It's more about looking after yourself. You know, it's often said that we live between here and here, really, because, you know, so much of our activity is happening above the neck, and we forget that the body is here, and the body is very intelligent. Like, we've got the gut intuition, you know, when you feel something in your gut that something's not right, or someone asks you, do you want to go and do something? And you don't, but you say yes, and then you feel it. The body is more intelligent than we give it credit for. So it's important to get out and get moving and move the stress around a little bit. My friend has a phrase that I think is really good. And she says, if you don't use your energy will use you. If you don't use your energy will use you. And that's, again, this builds up of stress and adrenaline and cortisol and all these hormones run around, flooding my system. And then I'm struggling to sleep. So I might just list the benefits of exercise, any exercise, whatever it might be, going for a walk, listen to a podcast, listen to some music, kicking back. It could be a nice little ritual for people that they decide, I'm finished my study at a certain time, and then I go for a 20-minute walk, and then I come back in, and that's me done for the evening. So this is not about you getting a six pack or loving sport. This is about just looking after your head, which is the most important thing in the world.
And even things like dancing around the kitchen, putting on music and just dancing around the kitchen as if nobody is watching. And who cares if somebody in your house is watching you? And the weather is turning. I know it's not a nice day in Galway today, but the weather is turning. There's plenty of green space. You know, if you're lucky enough to have a garden, why not spend some time in it and just take some time out for yourself and walk around your garden, if that's the only bit of green space that you may have within your 5K. The last word from both our guests, I'm going to ask you both, if you could only do a couple of things to support your mental well-being, what would be your top priorities? And Laura, I'm going to come to you first on that one.
I would make more time for me every day. So I'm not a big sports person, never played a team sport. So for me, it's like dancing like no one is watching, or jumping on a trampoline. You know, starting the day off right, planning what I'm going to do, allowing myself the headspace, and just looking out for me, looking out for my own personal well-being, so that I can be the best person that I want to be. Really simple.
Love it. Pat?
I'm going to share my screen one more time. I got two things I'm going to pass on to anyone that wants them. There's no pressure to.
I'm really impressed with your whiteboard.
I'm feeling like
Look.
I'm not up to date, up to scratch here at all.
I don't know. I had to have something to make myself more entertaining than I am. What was I going to say? I'm going to try and show this real quick. So what I would do, and this is something I do every day, because I have to. Again, it's. I wish I was one of these productive people that was really organized and everything else. I'm the opposite. So I see I have to do this stuff just to keep myself relatively sane. In the morning, I take about 10 minutes and I do 5 minutes of the box breath, which is what I touched on. So that's I breathe in for 4 seconds, I hold for 4, I breathe out for 4, and I hold for 4. And then I answer these 3 questions. What am I excited for today? It could be something simple, like watching something on Netflix tonight after I study. What am I grateful for? This reminds me that even though there's a lot missing in my life right now that's gone, there's still some great stuff left. And then I ask myself, what are my top 3 priorities? So maybe it's studying a chapter of Spanish and 2 other things. So that's the morning. And then in the evening, I just round it out. I do another 5 minutes of that breath just to down regulate and calm myself again, slow down the car before I go to bed. And I ask myself 3 questions. What did I learn today? Maybe I learned that I study better at a certain time. Who did I help today is a nice question to ask, just to, sometimes my own experience is when we're experiencing a lot of stress and overwhelm, we get caught in our own problems. And when you go and help people in some small capacity, it can help us get out of our own way. And what were my wins? So that's what I would do. 5 minutes of meditation in the morning and evening, and just answer those questions so I can pass on that tool if it's of use to people.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We did have one more question come in. I'm going to see if we can just pull it up very, very quickly. This participant says, I'm finding it very difficult to concentrate when I start to study. Do you have any suggestions? Thanks.
Yeah, I would come back to you're possibly in fight or flight. Like they say think about the monkey mind or the monk mind. We want to be in the monk mind. The way we go from monkey mind to monk mind is again the breath. So I know I keep coming back to it. But again, and anyone who struggles with sleep, again, there's a breath technique that can be useful. But I'll stick with the study for now. If I struggle to focus and my mind is very active, I'm in that fiery wired space. The car is going too fast. So I know I keep saying it, but I would breathe in for 4, I'd hold for 4, I'd exhale for 4, I'd hold for 4, do it for 3 minutes. And I promise you'll be a bit more centered, a bit more focused.
Laura, did you want to jump in there with that as well? Or are you happy?
Yeah, I think something similar. I mean, I would struggle. I struggle with the breathing thing. I'm still not there yet. And I think I think once you start, great, but I struggle with that. So for me, like the app on my phone, I was just like, okay, I'm just going to do 10 minutes, and I'd turn my phone over and I'd give myself maybe 25 minutes and hopefully I'd get to that stage. And actually, when you break it down into little chunks, it's so much more manageable. And the 25 minutes or the 10 minutes or the whatever it is will go a lot quicker, I think, than you anticipated. And once you start, then it's easier to get going after the breathing.
Absolutely. Well, that's it. So the hardest part is actually getting started. It's like going out for a run. The hardest bit is putting on your runners. Well, that is all we can fit into this iRevise.com discussion for this evening. Thank you so much to Dr. Laura Lenihan and to Pat Divilly for some great advice and insight and some super perspective as well on mindset and stress management. Thank you as always, of course, to iRevise.com who organized tonight's session, and a reminder that the most helpful study and exam resources as well as information on CAO and college options are all on iRevise.com. Do please share the link to tonight's session with other students. I'm sure they'll get a lot of benefit and support from it. Look after yourselves, stay safe. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.